I'm Miriam Yeung. I'm 40 years old this year. I say that because 20 years ago I sat in your seat, and I was a student activist at NYU, and I was coming to CLPP conferences, and I wanted Marlene to be my best friend. I didn't think of the little friendship bracelet, but somehow it all worked out. 20 years ago I came, I was probably rocking like baggy overalls because that was what was in style. And I had this beeper, because dude, that was the rage. Everyone's looking at me like, what the hell is a beeper? So I had a beeper, and it had a little gold chain. It was extra hot. And here's how beepers worked, for y'all who don't know. You would pick up the phone, dial the number that was for my beeper, then you would dial numbers onto a real phone, press pound and hang up, and then it would send a message to my beeper that was all numbers. So you could only send numbers on a beeper. People were like, whoa. So back then, in 1995, we were already creating code, right? Like we were sending each other messages, but it was only in numbers. Every now and then you might send a friend 07734, right? Because if you turned it upside down, it was like, hello. Oh, look, some people are nodding at me. You know, if you dialed your number and then put 911 at the end of it, that meant call me right back, this is an emergency, right? If you dialed your number and you had 411, that was just like, what's up, right? If your girlfriend dialed your number and put in her number and put 6969 at the end, well, you know what that meant. Some things change, some things don't. So a lot has changed in 20 years, and big props to Marlene, who's always been one of my key mentors through all this time, not to date you. You know, a couple of other things that have changed over the last 20 years. Asian Americans are way more present today than we ever were. When I was growing up in the projects, I was like the only Asian kid in my classroom. That's fairly unlikely now. 20 years ago, there were less than 10 million Asian Americans. Today, there are 19 million of us. To put it into context or comparison, that means for every lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender person, there are actually 2 Asian Americans, and if you're lucky, you get to be both. Asian Americans are the fastest rising racial group, and yet completely invisible in terms of research and what we know and how many of our community we actually see in leadership or in conversations. Of all health research, less than 1% includes any Asian Americans in the sample at all, right? So I think we gotta urge ourselves to look and say, when we're building a really diverse and representative community and movement, are there missing voices from the table, and what can we do to make sure that all our voices are heard? And this invisibility of the Asian American community, unfortunately, puts a big target on us, particularly around reproductive injustices. Now, I'm glad, Marlene, you talked about Purvi Patel. You know, Indiana has put 2 women through trials for infanticide. One woman was named Bebe Shui. She was a Chinese immigrant woman. Purvi Patel is an Indian immigrant woman. Now, Indiana, the Asian American community grew 74%, but still, there are only 125,000 Asian Americans in Indiana. So for them to try 2 people for infanticide, and both of them to be Asian American women, coincidence or not, right? This is the way anti-Asian racism is starting to emerge, right? Where the model minority myth says that, oh, all those Asians are rich and doing great. Meanwhile, Asian Americans are the fastest growing poor in this community. All those Asians, they're in tech, right? And doing really, really well. And yet, so many of our communities are struggling, just like many other communities. So when the model minority myth tells you that nothing's happening and there's nothing going on, then our needs and our services don't get met, right? People don't think about Asian Americans when they're considering their work and considering the needs. And that's the case with Purvi Patel. How did she get to a place where she was so desperate, right? How did she get to a place where she had to be bleeding out to seek emergency care and then to have doctors there suspect her and then put her on trial right there, really, and then call the police, right, from the doctor's office. So at this moment, I would say, and Asian Americans are being targeted around the country for anti-abortion bans, so-called sex-selective abortion bans, and literally legislators are standing up all around the country saying stereotypes and lies about our community, saying, hey, we need to ban sex-selective abortion bans because those Asians are coming from those countries and they're bringing these kind of backwards values. So that kind of outright xenophobia is really alive and kicking. And these are just two instances of places and ways Asian Americans are particularly targeted. So today, I'm sending out a message to all of you. Like, if this were 20 years ago, I'd be beeping you with a little 911. We really got to stand up and protect Purvi Patel. We have a huge campaign to try to free Purvi Patel right now. We have a petition in the back that I need everyone to help sign. And when I text you 911, text, see, that's like a modern term. When I beep you 911, that means I need people to holler back, right? So holler back.
Yes.